So the disadvantages of not writing a script for YouTube videos, but every time I write a script, it sounds like I'm reading from it. So I ended up, this is like my fourth time recording this because I forgot to start Pro Tools. So basically my guitar was not being recorded. So I've got this little Yeti Nano mic. It makes it a lot easier sometimes than setting up the boom mic for audio. Anyway, I ended up picking up a used Axe FX 3 on Reverb. It was saved me a little bit of money. I say a little bit. I had to sell one of my Strats. I'm terrible as I'm always selling something, but I think I'm running out of stuff to sell. I never was. It was a 2008 American Strat. Wasn't too attached to it because I'd just never been a very good Strat player. And I realized lately why that was after I got a Tele, one of the American professional Teles that have the narrow tall frets, I think they call them. So the Strat, I end up because the frets they've always put on them are not as tall, and I end up digging into the fretboard, which slows things down for me. But hey, to each his own. I've always been more of a Les Paul and a super Strat kind of guy with the bigger jumbo frets, I guess. But regardless, maybe one day I'll pick up another Strat because I love the way they sound and they're so versatile. But back to this. So basically, the reason I made that jump, and I've said it in other videos, is really for the power. I've got an Axe 8 right now, and I came from the Helix side, and the Helix was good. I think the sounds personally for me are better on the Fractal, and I should say that the caveat is that I think the Helix and a lot of other models can do this stuff. It's just a matter of how things are laid out and how quickly you can get those sounds. So for me, the Fractal, you can get there faster, but there are some limitations from a processor standpoint on the Axe 8 that you really had to think about when you're running your blocks. And I'm pretty simple when it comes to patches, so it wasn't much of a limitation. But I wanted to kind of future-proof things. I like the layout on the Axe 3. I like the new front panel to change things. I really just had a hard time. I still have with the Axe 8. And so Axe Edit works well, but in a pinch, sometimes you need to use the front panel, and it was just difficult for me. But with the Axe 3, I knew there was tons of processing power, and I was able to possibly try something that was really exciting for me, and which was running multiple musicians into the box. And so what we do for my situation is I have a little home studio. I've got an X32, which is the Behringer X32 console. It's a compact version, so it's a little smaller. I say a little bit smaller because it's still big. P16 personal mixers for each musician. And up until now, we've been using, whether it was the Helix, myself, I got another little Firehawk, a Line 6 Firehawk used on Reverb, a couple $100 for my other guitar player, any like guest musician, so it's been nice. And we run all in-ears, and I've got a Roland V-Drum set. I've said that before, sorry if I'm repeating, and for those who have watched other videos. And that Roland V-Drum runs into my Mac triggering virtual drums, which is from the Superior drum libraries. And obviously I can use just the left and right outs of the brain for the Roland, but the kits are just amazing on the Superior drummer. So that's a whole nother video. But I wanted to see, just for simplicity, how I could run things in here. So didn't have a lot of time, but I wanted to at least set up a couple different paths. We ran this last night with me and my guitar player. Obviously, the biggest thing is there's no foot controller available yet. So I had to switch things on the fly with the rotary knob, or the encoders on the Axe FX. So that was a little challenging, and so you got to think, okay, what's the one I go back and forth with the most? So you kind of put those scenes. So I ended up mid-practice kind of changing the scenes around. And just to make it a little easier, so he wouldn't hear these gaps in his ears, the other guitar player. So what I've dialed in is a very simple dual path here. I'm in input 1, output 1, and he's in input 2 going to output 2. I'm still learning a lot of this routing stuff. I initially ran into a little issue. I was yesterday morning for work. I was trying to dial in and see if the bass could come in. And then I was like, oh, I don't have another amp or cab block, and because there's only 2 available. So, coming in here, I was like, oh, where's my amps? Oh no, I have no cabs left. But as I was on the forums yesterday trying to maybe ask silly questions and, I was like, maybe I'm missing something. But most of the times, and I've run it too, is running bass direct through a DI box or something like that. And, maybe a drive pedal in front of it. So you can really mimic that. I'll show that later. But for now, I wanted to show kind of taking our real live situation and seeing how it works for the Axe FX3. So last night we did run this. It ran fine. Just like I said, I had to switch presets, which was a little bit, not presets, but I basically just made scenes because my other guitar player is very simple. The Firehawk, he's not a pedal board guy. He's basically just plug into the amp, the front. I think he uses, over the years, he's like added a reverb pedal for cleans. So he runs things very simple. But what I want to do is kind of mimic what he had. I do like, he uses a 5153 100-watt head and a Mesa cab. I did dial this preset based on one of Leon's videos, Leon Todd. He's absolutely wonderful in what he does for the community. So good shout out for him. And so I've basically mimicked kind of some of those things that he runs live. The issue is obviously last night is we both sounded exactly the same. I didn't have enough time to dial in two distinct sounds like we're normally doing. A lot of times I would either run the Helix, which would have more mids, less of that scooped sound, so not as quite as heavy. Or in the past, I have a Bogner Ecstasy 101B. It's still a high gain amp, but just a totally different sound. So our sounds generally complement each other, which is nice. But for time's sake, this is quick. I'm on the top, and I've got a little more, I say complex, but it's not complex. So I had to think, how am I going to do this in the practice situation where I have no foot controller? What's the easiest thing? So for me, I thought, okay, let's just have some scenes that change and turn off and on and off blocks on these two paths. He's basically going to need just maybe a solo boost at some point. And I totally forgot that he would need clean, so I should have mirrored that, which would have probably bumped up the CPU. But why don't we just try it for, let's just mirror this. So now that we've mirrored this path here, so we can have it a little more realistic, we're hovering now about 12% more than we were, 11% more of CPU. But I'm going to show you what we can do here in a few minutes. What I've got is pretty simple. I've got what I call my meat scene, which is really dry. Although I do have on that cab block, I do have in this room air section, I do have a little bit of this to add a little more kind of separation or just liven things up in the in-ear mix, which can be pretty dry. The enhancer block helps out too, but two guitar players, sometimes it can be overwhelming, and you I generally even back that off a lot, even if it's just me, to not provide so much separation because it just feels weird sometimes. Except on cleans, and I'll show you that. It sounds really nice. So with that, so that is my basic rhythm tone. Over here, sometimes even during rhythm parts, I want a little bit of ambience or just something that will liven that up a little bit. So I will add a slight bit of delay. This is more than a slight bit because I haven't played with it too much. I transfer them over directly from the Axe 8 using Frac Tool. So that's pretty, I would probably normally just take the mix down even more. So I'll do that kind of stuff where maybe I don't want, it might be just a little section that doesn't need a boost for a solo, but rhythm, kind of maybe a single note I'm playing, during a song. Then over 3, I go to my lead boost, which is titled Shred, but I need to actually do this. So generally I'll run this parametric EQ with a little bit of a boost in the mids. it was sounding kind of weird to my in-ears, and it just was a little harsh. So I need to play with that a little bit, so I've left that off for now. 4 goes into my clean, and the enhancer block turns on, a little bit of reverb. Sometimes I'll put delay on if I'm crazy enough, and I have my tap tempo where I can tap it with my foot as well. That is not the sound, I know, but. That is running, what is that running? Jazz, yeah, 120. So, nice clean sound, I think, so far. 5, I figured, okay, my boy Ryan needs some lead boost. So on 5, basically kept mine the same, and then kick in his, which is not supposed to have this, kicked in his solo, which adds some delay, same kind of parametric EQ, which was cool. So now there's that. We played with it last night. It worked well. Ooh, I forgot about my wah board. So I've got a wah that's running on I've got what is it, the SP2, the Mission Engineering? I think that's what it is. But for now, because it's so hard to push those on the carpet when I'm in the studio, I've got a Roland EV5. It's hard to see. It's an old expression pedal. And it's just an auto wah, basically. I've got it set up to activate and stop at the top of it. So I would look at my other guitar player and I'd say, okay, what do you think? Does it sound good? Does it feel good? And he's one of those, his famous saying is, I'm down for whatever. He's super calm, doesn't say much, doesn't speak up a lot. So he's happy with it, and that's all that matters right now. Now, if I got like another me, I'd probably be in for a challenge to say, it's just not right, doesn't feel right. But what we can do here is now, let's add my bass player in. So I was on the forums yesterday trying to figure this one out. I realized yesterday morning when I started to do it, I would go to add an amp, and I was like, oh, I forgot about that. So only 2 amps. But and same thing with the cab. Let's add a cab, and I'm out of cabs. But the thing is it really, when I'm running direct, most of the time I'm running bass direct anyway. I'll put an EQ or drive pedal to kind of give it that grit I need in some of the harder stuff. So I'm going to add an input and output block, and you're going to see it's going to jump up here already. I'm going to add a compressor and an EQ, and as a suggestion from Moke over at the forums, he had said, hey, maybe try the IR player block. I'm not familiar with that. I need to figure that out, but we're just going to add the block so we can see the CPU. Where are we at? Input. Oh, sorry. Input 3. So we're jumping up a few up here. Now we're getting into the red. No. Output 3. Ooh, 83. Still okay. Let's connect these. There's a faster way to do this, I know, but the manual, I forgot what it said to do. I'm going to add a compressor, an EQ. Let's just add a graphic for now. Let's add a 4-band. Oh, we already got the warning. Yeah, see, I knew it was somewhere over there. And the IR player block. But I got one thing we're going to try. So right now, we don't have the graph anymore. We're just at a warning. Can I still play? Still usable, but at a warning. I don't like to see that for sure. So we know that no matter what I do here, it's going to stick up here 86%. So let's come down to this new feature. I'm going to get rid of these blocks, and it's going to take it immediately down to the safe zone. Nice. Look at that. So we have saved probably 12-13% by that. Nice new feature of the Axe 3. is this preamp. In the preamp section, there is an input boost. So rather than taking up an entire block here, we can go ahead and add this. They don't have the FET boost. I don't know what the difference between this fast and FET is yet. For this kind of stuff, maybe for the more aggressive stuff, I'll usually add some sort of clon style, and I'll kind of set it up as a clean boost depending on how much grid I want. I'll max the level out and I'll take the gain up all the way down, and then sometimes I'll just play with those two parameters. But let's just take this super overdrive. We've turned it on. We've got our boost up here. It'll probably be fairly close. It's still good though. So it's still going to be fairly close. We can adjust this boost level to kind of tighten things up, and I'm sure there's other stuff inside the amp block that we could do to keep it tight. And I can still go over to my delayed scene. So I could still mess with some of the channels features in here to boost up my solos even more. So I'm not going to go into that. You guys have probably watched tons of Axe 3 videos and on how to do that. I think I just cut my finger on my string. Some of my fret inlays are actually coming up out of this Les Paul. It's really strange. So anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to show you. But look, we're running below the threshold of the warning on the CPU. And I mean, me by myself, I would never use a patch that big. But just think about the possibilities of, depending on the gig that you have, or say you have an acoustic guitar, or got a vocal that you're going to run through this. You've got 3 different kind of things that you can do. You got a wireless maybe that you have on the back, and then you want to plug up front with the a wired, which is when you plug into the front input, it disables the back one. So kind of a nice, and you'll see that in the manual. They use that example. But coming to a gig, if you're a solo artist, I'm not, I can't sing. But if you come to a gig, bringing just that one device with an FR speaker and direct to front of house. Same thing with a small band that you come in here and say, okay, maybe not quite as realistic, but it can be done. You come in and you have everybody just shares the Axe effects running to a click track, or if you wanted to be the master controller, controlling that, or having somebody side stage, having them with an FC controller or any kind of MIDI controller, switching those and just running in and out of presets and scenes. So lots of options here. What I want to do later is I'm going to bring in a drummer, bring in my other guitar player, bass player, basically bring my band in actually and show you, get actually visuals so you can see us all running and playing and kind of listening and seeing how well it handles that. I mean, obviously it's going to handle it fine, but just to hear the sound from it, the unit itself. So I think it'd be a good demo just to see a full band playing on one device. It's just a testament of what this box is capable of. So as always, hey, if you like this content, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think, good or bad. I mean, everybody's got opinions, and it's just one big community. We can all help each other out. So for now, have a good week, and we'll talk to you soon.